After making a recent video about some of my favourite tools, I thought it'd be good to make another one about some of my favourite modelling materials. So these are things like black tack, Captain tape and the different types of wire that I use when I'm doing sound installs. I'm going to show you how I use them and when to use the different things and also when not to use them. So, because it's one of my best selling products, I am going to start by talking about black tack. I use this nearly every day because it's really good for holding speakers and for a few other things within sort of model railways, but I predominantly use it for holding speakers. So, I've got a Class 37 chassis here. There's a few loose wires hanging out of this model because it's been used for various things, but just ignore those for the time being. I'm just going to show you how to use the black tack to hold a speaker. So the first thing to say is that you don't need a lot of black tack, so I'm only going to use a really small amount. I think sometimes, judging by what I've seen on models that have maybe come back, people are using way too much. So I've just got a little piece here and I'm just going to run that into sort of a little sausage shape. And I'm going to put that down one side and I'm going to get another one, similar sort of size, and do the same thing. And that's going to go down the other side. So you'll notice, it's not perfect, but you will notice if you look at that I've pretty much gone either side of the wires. The reason I've not stuck it across the wires is because if I ever want to take this speaker out and take the black tack out, I don't want all that black tack to be covering the wires because it'll just make it really difficult and really messy. So when I start pulling the speaker out with the black tack, I'll probably pull out the wires as well, which I definitely don't want to be doing. So that's enough to hold that speaker. And that speaker's not going to go anywhere now. Can even lift the model with it. So that's a nice strong hold. And that's a perfect use for black tack. In certain scenarios, if I wasn't trying to fill a bit of a gap under the speaker, you could actually use even less. Sometimes I will literally just get a little ball of it and maybe put something that size under each corner of the speaker, because it's all it needs. You don't need anything more than that often. Another thing to be wary of with black tack is that you don't want to put it on any electrical components. So for example, if I were trying to stick another speaker, like a small speaker at this end, I wouldn't want to put the black tack over these electronic components, because if I pull that off, there's a chance it could pull the component with it and you end up damaging your model, and it's obviously not worth it. So only stick it to sort of plain areas of the circuit board if you're going to stick it anywhere. If you can see that, that's a good example. But definitely don't be sticking it over components. I mean, some components are even smaller and the solder on these isn't going to be particularly strong if you start pulling at it. So yeah, that's something to avoid too. An example where you definitely don't want to use black tack is if you're using a decoder. So if you wanted to put a decoder in a model, this is just a non-sound one just to make it easy for the video, but some people would just put a bit of black tack under this decoder and stick it onto it. But because the decoder gets hot, you definitely don't want to be sticking it down with black tack if you can help it. So what you would want to use in this situation would be some Captain tape. So it's just like sellotape really, but it's particularly heat resistant, so it's good in scenarios where something's going to get hot. So if I were fixing down this decoder, I'd just get a couple of lengths of Captain tape, or even a single length is probably enough. You don't need to use much. But yeah, just get a little piece of Captain tape like that. Oops. And then put that across the decoder. and just have it coming down sides of the chassis a bit, but it's still nice and neat, and it's heat resistant, and that decoder's not going to go anywhere. If you just sat that on black tack and the black tack starts melting, one, it might not be fixed particularly well, but also you might start getting like oils coming out of the black tack and stuff, which can find their way under the heat shrink in the decoder or onto other parts of the model. So it's definitely better doing it with Captain Tape. I'd say the same for Stylives too, because Stylives can get quite warm in use, so don't use black tack on those either. Use Captain Tape. There's other things available like sticky dots or things like the double-sided 3M tapes. Those tend to be okay with heat, so you could use those, but they can be a little bit too strong, especially if you need to remove it in the future. If you need to use wire on a model, if you need to add to the wires and do extra little bits of wiring, for example, or extend anything, this ribbon cable is really good, because if I sell this in a metre length, there's actually 4 lots of each colour, so you end up with 4 metres of each colour of wire, and it's got all the main DCC colours. So if I just show you one of the wires, obviously it just pulls apart, so you've got all your individual strands, and it keeps the insulation on, it doesn't damage it when you pull it off. But if I just strip a little bit of this wire to show you, it's actually nice fine stranded wire, copper, so I don't know how well that's going to focus, but yeah, copper stranded wire inside that, and it's nice and thin, just slightly thicker than what you get on a Locksound decoder as standard, but still more than thin enough to work within a double O gauge model. But yeah, that's another useful material which I regularly use. It's a little bit better than some of the stuff that comes like on coils and stuff, and also some of the cheaper wires can be just single strand, which end up snapping and can be a little bit harder to solder. So this is perfect. It's well worth having one of these in your toolbox, and it'll last you years, usually anyway, it depends how much you use, but for most people who are just needing little bits here and there to extend a wire, it's really good. You can just keep it as a ribbon like that, so that it's nice and neat to store, and just pull the little pieces of wire off it as you need them. Another useful thing in terms of wires is these little plugs and sockets. I do different ones. I do 2-pin like this one up to 6-pin. So the 2-pin one is the most common one that people buy because you can use it for speakers and stuff. So a good example of how to use it might be if you've got a speaker connected to the body of a model and your decoder's on the chassis, you might want to be able to disconnect them so that you can completely remove the body if you are ever needing to. You might want to use it between, say, if you've got a DMU and you're putting a speaker in each side, you might want to use that to connect the speaker so that you can disconnect them to take it off your track. So that's another good use for them. And there's probably other uses on your layout, like if you had lights in a building that you wanted to be able to lift off, for example. Do different ones. So that's the 3-pin version. Colour coded as well, so you can work out which colour you want to use for which job. The final thing is just these strips of weights. The kind of automotive weights, these, that'd be normally used in cars, but they're really good for models, particularly just weighing down wagons and things. So you can just sort of cut a few off. You can either cut them into individual pieces or just leave a few as a strip, and then you can just put them into the bottom of a wagon, say like that, under a load. So nice and neat, and they're really heavy for the size of them, so don't take up a lot of space to add some weight, and they're self-adhesive as well, so you don't need to use any glue or anything. You can just stick them down into your model, really quick and easy to use. And if you have got things like this that are prone to derailing, it'll really help them. So yeah, they're the main materials that I use. If you've not watched the one about tools, watch that video too, because that goes into a bit of depth with the tools that I use frequently. And yeah, these are the materials that I use frequently. So yeah, have a look on the website. If there's any that you like the look of, remember that they're all 3 for 2. That can be mixed and matched with the tools as well. So yeah, hopefully you found that one useful again. If you've enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe if you don't already. It all helps more people find the channel.